Hello, I'm Stacey Solomon and welcome to Mum Takeover.
Hello everybody, I'm Anna Foster from 5 Live and we are here at the beautiful Blackpool Tower in this gorgeous circus to kickstart the UK's biggest conversation about mums and mental health. Everything from postnatal depression, anxiety, loneliness, work-life balance, the whole lot. Anything that you felt or talked about, you're probably going to hear here in the next few hours.
Absolutely. I'm Rochelle Humes and we're going to be live, as Anna said, for the next 2 hours over on bbc.co.uk/mum takeover and on BBC Radio 5 Live's Facebook page. We've got 40 plus... 40? No, that's not impressive. We've got 400 plus mums in the audience and some dads too. Shout out to the dads. Hey. There they are. We've had a lot of support online already. We've been trending this morning, #Mum Takeover, so that's very exciting.
And I'm Giovanna Fletcher, and we will be discussing the facts, hearing personal stories, and looking for solutions for the mental health challenges affecting so many mums and dads in the UK.
We have got our gorgeous panel of experts, and not to forget, of course, our mums who have joined us today. Lots of you from Blackpool. Woo! And you can follow the conversation on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram, #Mum Takeover.
And don't forget, today is all about starting this conversation. It's going to continue, we hope, for a very long time online. It's just a chance to share experiences, share your thoughts, your stories, and sometimes it's just about hearing somebody say, you know what, I recognise that and I've been through it as well. So lots of that to come in the next few hours. Our celeb mums are going to head off into the audience and get themselves ready, and it's a good time to meet our panel.
Hi, so I'm Annie O'Leary and I'm the Editor-in-Chief of Net Mums, the UK's biggest parenting community online. We are a place where 8 million mums come and talk every month, and where they can offer each other peer-to-peer support, that invaluable thing that gets you through those tricky days. We also offer a parent supporter service where trained mental health professionals are on hand to spot anyone in trouble and lend an ear and direct you to help near you in your community that can really get you back on track. I'm really excited to be here today. It's really important that we talk about mental health, and it's really important that people listen as well. We are mums telling the world that mental health matters. So I want you all to sit up and listen today and make sure you get on board with this.
Yeah, great message.
And I'm Gregoire. I'm a perinatal psychiatrist, which is a mother and baby psychiatrist, a consultant in the NHS, and I'm also chair of the Maternal Mental Health Alliance, which represents 85 patient and professional organisations, all committed to improving the mental health of mums and the outcomes for them and their babies. And I'm also a presenter on the BBC Two series, Trust Me, I'm a Doctor. See it in January.
We trust already. I'm going to be taking notes. Alan's your man for advice this afternoon.
Hiya, I'm Claire Law. I work for Better Start right here in Blackpool. My role really is to design new services for mums and dads with babies and young children as part of the Better Start initiative. It's a national lottery-funded initiative, and it's all about improving outcomes and finding out what works best for our youngest children.
Yeah, and Neev.
Hi everyone, my name's Neev. I'm a radio presenter and a DJ. I had my first child last year, beautiful little girl called Genevieve. I struggled with my mental health in the months that followed her birth, and I feel like, because I got through it all, I have so many tips and hopefully some really useful advice for you mums today. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the most important thing, and the reason why we're all here, is to actually talk about this, because for so long it's felt that mums and mental health and those problems and worries that you have, you know, sharing them's always felt a bit taboo, definitely in public like this. I mean, Annie, you get a lot of people online on the forums who like to talk, but doing it in a public way, we just don't do it, do we?
Exactly, we don't. One of the reasons that NetMums has become so successful is it offers women a place to talk anonymously about the things that are concerning them or bothering them. But it's time we kind of dropped the anonymous thing and stood up and said, look, this is happening to me, this is real, this is parenthood, because chances are the woman next to you's felt exactly the same thing too. Yeah. And it's time we came together to share that stuff.
It's our fear of judgment, isn't it? I mean, Neev, when you know, as we said, you're a broadcaster, you're a DJ, you are known for being, you know, a kind of cool celebrity mum. So you must have made a conscious decision at some point to say, you know what, I'm going to talk about this, and I know people might look at me differently, but I'm going to do this.
I was actually really afraid because I knew that the world was kind of watching. It felt that way anyway. They're really not, but that's how it feels. And I tend to share a lot on social media, but I kept sharing really perfect pictures of me and Genevieve, you know, only when my makeup was done. And I just didn't feel comfortable telling everyone what I was really going through. I really internalized my feelings of postnatal anxiety. That was my thing. I was anxious about her well-being all the time. But as soon as I started talking about it, I did some work with Heads Together, the mental health charity, started speaking about my experience. I felt so much better. I felt empowered, and day by day, I kind of mentally got stronger.
Yeah.
And it's all about just telling people how you're feeling and being true to yourself.
Yeah. And being honest. Speaking of which, you might hear the sound of kids playing, children crying when we get a little bit too boring in the next couple of hours. It's because all of our mums who are here today, many of them have brought kids with them. I can see somebody having a great time with a with a toy train just down there. So you might hear that for the next couple of hours, but don't worry about that at all. I mean, I suppose, Claire, it is all about being real. Oh, look at that gorgeous,
that smile.
Gorgeous little man there. It is all about being real, isn't it? You can't have a conversation like this without kids.
No, definitely not. I mean, I can't have a conversation at home without kids.
Yes.
That's
very real.
Yeah, and I think there's a massive pressure on people to conform, and I think, as Neev says, to kind of have that kind of Facebook or Twitter, you know, and show those photos that just aren't reality. So I think it's absolutely brilliant that we're having this conversation and really in the reality of what we're living with all the time.
Yeah, and the important thing to know is as well, wherever you're watching this, if you're watching it online, if you're at home, if you're on social media, get involved, use the hashtag, share your experiences, give a bit of advice. This is a conversation that starts here in Blackpool, but hopefully it'll go on across the whole internet this afternoon. We're talking about mental health conditions, but that kind of feeds in, doesn't it, to our lives, to the way we feel about ourselves. Two specific areas we're going to look into in the next couple of hours that really affect our mental health. One is loneliness, particularly when the kids are small, and the other is work-life balance as well, that difficulty, that pressure to try and have it all, and how you juggle the logistics of life. And at BBC 5 Live, we've conducted a special survey of mums and dads with YouGov on those very areas, which has come up with some really fascinating findings. So we'll look at those through the show as well. Giovanna.
Yeah, the panel and all of us mums are going to be sharing our experiences because parenthood is challenging and it affects all of us, whether we are a normal mum, what is a normal mum, an expert, or even Queen of the Seven Kingdoms. Queen of the Seven Kingdoms. Game of Thrones fans, you're going to love this.
Hi. I'm just thinking what motherhood means. This sort of says it all. It means you're last to get a shower. If you get to do a face mask, winner. You'll never ever poo alone again. I'd say you're doing a brilliant job, and I would say trust yourself, and I would say ask for help. Don't be ashamed to say that you yell. Don't be ashamed to say you feel down, that it's getting overwhelming. It is the hardest job in the world. Got to relax about all the extracurricular pressure and competition. It's bollocks. Just be the parent, be the best parent you can be, and that's it. They'll be all right. They'll be all right. By Mum's Takeover. Peace out.
Lena Headey, everybody. That was a great bit of editing in there, wasn't it? I'm glad that bit happened. Who plays Cersei Lannister, of course, in Game of Thrones. While our celebrity mums are here, I mean, it was really interesting there, wasn't it, Stacey, the way that Lena, when she sent us that video, wanted it to be real and to feel really authentic. And actually, you've done a lot of that. You don't shy away from being ordinary on social media when the time requires it, do you?
No, I spent a lot of my first pregnancy and being a mum feeling very isolated, 17, not knowing where to go or who to talk to. And I finally found a place where I can communicate with people, and sharing is the best medicine. Also, I morally feel that if I'm honest and open, that other people might be able to relate to me and feel less guilty and less pressure on what they're doing, because we are ultimately all doing the best job that we can, and we love our children implicitly. And that's all you can do, right?
Yeah, well, exactly. But what about the pushback? I mean, you know, for most of us, Rochelle, it might be a mum or a mother-in-law or a friend or somebody like that who maybe questions your choices. But when you're on social media and you put it out there, you must get a lot of people questioning your choice. And that must be really hard sometimes.
I think, as you say, as soon as you have kids, someone's got an opinion. Whether you ask for that opinion and whether it's welcomed, they're going to give it to you. So I think that's just something that, you know, everyone deals with and you get used to. I recently had a bit of a backlash because I didn't Instagram the moment, but I just was telling everyone on my stories what I did. My little one, who at the time was quite young, she's 8 months now, but she was a real baby, and she had a really bad cold, and I was like, I've just been through a really interesting evening. It was like about 2-3 a.m. and she was so bunged up, and I Googled, as we all frantically do, what can I do? You know, I wasn't around anything that was useful. So I actually sucked the snot out myself, and it wasn't pleasant, and I just shared it with a load of mums, and everyone's like, well, yeah, done that before. Now I know that I can go to the pharmacy and buy one of those like things that help you. So yeah, but at 3 a.m. it wasn't available. I received a bit of backlash for it, but you know, I needed to do it. What am I going to do?
Well, that's it. You've got to do what you've got to do.
Absolutely.
And actually, Giovanna, that's a really good point, because I've always found that whether it's 3 o'clock in the morning or whatever time it is, when you start searching for whatever it might be, everything from, you know, when your kids don't do the milestones that you're expecting them to do, right through to one I genuinely had to search was, 3-year-old has just punched me in the face. And that was my daughter and not my son. It's always the case, isn't it, that somebody somewhere has had that same experience.
Absolutely. I love it when I go to search something online, I think this is ridiculous, and that the rest of the sentence comes up, it's completed. So it's definitely been searched. You know, I'm not on my own. I wish I could actually go through my search history and find out those sentences, because it is ridiculous. But I think the world online is just so amazing, and actually I think a lot of us, well, we're told to focus on the trolls or, you know, everything that's negative, and actually there's such an amazing space being created for mums and dads. And actually, I think it's all honest. You know, I think we've been told for far too long about this perfect life and this perfect mum and dad. And actually, what's happening now online is that everyone's going, I'm not perfect. And it's letting everyone see that whatever you're doing, and if it works for you, it's great. You're not failing. And so many of us feel that we are on a daily basis.
Yeah, and sometimes when you look at the figures, that makes a real difference. I said we're going to start with clinical mental health, postnatal depression, anxiety, anything along those lines. And our YouGov survey for BBC 5 Live suggests that more than a third of mums have experienced mental health issues that were specifically related to motherhood, which is compared to 17% of dads. I mean, we did talk about whether that mums are more likely to share than dads, but there's a definite difference in the figures and the numbers. So let's get this discussion started, because we've got so many mums and so many fantastic stories to share in the audience. We're going to begin with Eve. Eve, hello. Hi. Now, tell us about your story, because I was reading one of your posts online the other day, which was so much good information that I wish, to be honest, somebody had given me on the way home from the hospital. Tell us about your experience to start off with. Where are you coming at this from?
So I'm coming at this from having never had a mental illness. When I had my son 7.5 years ago, I developed postpartum psychosis and postnatal anxiety disorder. So when I had Joe, I didn't have the rush of love that people talk about. I had something very different and very dramatic. I had a real fear of him, and I thought he was evil. I thought he'd been sent to destroy me. I had hallucinations that I was floating in the air or that I'd been buried alive. And I'd never ever heard that having a baby could happen, you know, this could happen to you and a baby.
So you weren't primed for any of that? That was a complete surprise?
None of that, a complete surprise, because it seems so extreme, the kind of symptoms that you have, but they started to happen to me within a few hours of having my son. And eventually, when he was 6 weeks old, I was hospitalised in a psychiatric mother and baby unit, a place like where Alan consults, to start my recovery. And it took me around 1.5 years to recover from the symptoms I was experiencing, because it was so traumatising. And you're right, the reason that I wrote the blog that I did the other day was because myself and my family had absolutely no idea where to go or who to talk to. And
who did you first, can you remember who you first went to? Because sometimes it's making that first leap, isn't it? And trusting one person to tell.
Absolutely. So I remember 5 days after I had my son Joe, I went to the GP and said I had a very real fear of him, and I didn't know why. I didn't want to be near him. And she told me that I needed some more sleep.
Really?
And I saw another GP, and I've written about this as well, where one GP told me to make a cake, get some new makeup for myself, and maybe I'd start feeling a bit better about myself.
Were they well-meaning? Was it just that they didn't understand?
I think they were very well-meaning. None of them were rude or unkind to me, but I think they hadn't ever seen anything like me, and I think they were giving me the lines they maybe would give to other people for when they come into them for something very mild. But I genuinely think now, working how I do in maternal mental health, that they had never seen anything like me.
Really?
Yeah.
So, and how do you, once you've identified what the problem is, and once you're living through that, how do you then start to change things? What do they do to kind of make that better?
Well, for me, going into the mother and baby unit was the single best thing that I ever did. It saved my life. The morning I went into it was the day I decided that I wanted to die. I was heavily medicated.
You say that so... Casually is not the right word, but that's such a huge thing for anybody.
Do you know what it is? I've come to terms with my illness and the symptoms that happened to me. And my friend always says, motherhood has been the making of me, but not in the way that I thought it was going to be. I've seen a new side to myself, a massive strength in myself, and I have reached those depths where I've truly thought that I did not want to be here and almost attempted it. And to see my recovery and how accepting help from proper healthcare professionals with medication, that it's okay to go into an in-unit if need be, and accepting that you need some time and lots of support. I've accepted that. I've accepted where the depth that I went to, and I've accepted that I'm very much recovered.
Yeah. Alan, that's a really big part of it, isn't it? As Eve was describing there, that comfort, that feeling that you can go and talk to somebody, you can talk to a health professional, and they won't necessarily judge. There are so many fears, aren't there, involved with just starting that conversation with somebody?
Well, the most common fear that people have before going to a health professional, and that often stops people going to a health professional, is that they're going to be judged. And of course, at this particular time, this critical time in our lives, the particular judgment we fear most of all is they're going to take my baby away, or they're going to think I'm a terrible mum. Yeah. And the reality is that babies are not removed purely because of mental illness. Yes, babies are removed, that does happen, but it's not because of the mental illness,
it's
because
common,
of other things.
Alan, that idea, I mean, just to our mums in the audience, is that something that any of you have ever worried about? That if you told somebody official, that I can see nodding, that somebody would try and take the baby away, or they would try and change things? Yeah, it sounds like it's something that a lot of us go through, actually. Annie, do you find that, when people are searching, that comes up as quite a common fear?
And the tragic result is that about 50% of mums who have a mental health problem that is helpable professionally and treatable never get recognised at all, and struggle through it month after month, sometimes year after year, when these conditions are helpable, are treatable. And Eve's story is typical of that incredibly severe illness, postpartum psychosis. 100% are recoverable.
Yeah.
But
Eve,
it's a horrible
I know that
illness.
Eve, you've got a question to ask as well to our panel.
Yeah, I do. So it's following on. I'm really interested, how can we support women who have a real sense of shame over their symptoms and have a real silence around what's happening to them? How can we encourage them to open up to a healthcare professional?
Yeah. Neev, what do you think? Because that was something you did yourself. How would you encourage others?
I think that it's the kind of situation, shame is definitely associated to feelings of postnatal depression. I know that for me personally, I didn't even want my husband to know that I wasn't okay, because I was so afraid that he would think less of me, and I wanted to seem in control and like I had everything down and I was fine. But actually, the best thing that you can do is open up to somebody. I actually opened up to my best friend, who happened to be in Australia, and she became my absolute confidant. She's a GP, so I was really fortunate because I kind of had that medical help, as it were. And then I told my mum, and I did tell my husband, and I think really the best way that you can support a mum that's feeling that way, and I'm sure that Annie will agree, is you just start talking on the forums, start discussing your feelings, don't feel ashamed. You're not necessarily in control of your hormones. You're not sleeping, you're not eating right, you're sleep deprived, you're malnourished. You've got
to be kind, haven't you?
You're not on the top of your game. You're pressured. It's okay to think, I can't cope, I'm not managing. And that's where I think, organisations like Net Mums really help, because in the middle of the night, the internet can be your best friend. It can be. You've just got to use it in the right way, because it's there and there's support there when everyone else might be sleeping and you're sitting there worrying about things, going over and over them.
It is. It's having that support and companionship. And I know you do a lot of that, Eve, so thank you. Rochelle.
I'm joined now by the lovely Sophie. Now, Sophie, obviously, we're talking there about mental health problems. You had mental health problems prior to pregnancy, but you found that pregnancy made that a lot worse for you. It's right, isn't it?
Yeah, I've suffered from anxiety and depression since I was about 11 years old, as well as an eating disorder. And then when I was pregnant with my second child, my symptoms got a lot worse and it turned into psychosis. So I was having psychotic episodes. I was crawling around the house thinking I'd been shot at. I thought there were enemies out there to attack me. And yeah, so things really did get really bad in my second pregnancy.
So I'm just quickly firing a quick question to the panel. After hearing that, is that a common thing? If there's an issue that's already there, will pregnancy make that worse, or is there a chance that it could make it better?
Well, for some conditions, it definitely can make it worse. So we know that, for example, with a condition known as bipolar disorder, which used to be called manic depression, if that's ever happened in the past, then the risk is huge of it coming back again after a baby's born. But with other conditions like depression and anxiety, the increased risk of it happening isn't hugely great, but the significance of it happening at this so important time in our lives is enormous. And therefore, getting the help, getting the support of everybody. You know, we've all got a role to play. Our society, all of us, should nurture parents, mums, babies, children. It's a critical time for all of us, and we need all the help we can get. I agree, it's the most important thing any of us ever does, and the most difficult thing any of us ever does. And there's one thing you can guarantee: you will not get it 100% right. It isn't possible.
Yeah. Well, it's certainly difficult, isn't it? Thank you very much, Sophie. Thank you.
Thanks, Rochelle. Stacey, who have you got with you?
I am here with Fiona Small.
Hi. Hello.
Fiona, you're the founder of Young Mums Support Network. You're an incredible woman. Tell me your experiences of becoming a mum.
So I became mum 13 years ago, and sadly for me, the person I became pregnant for told me I should terminate my pregnancy, and if I didn't, he'd have nothing to do with her. So to date, he's never seen her and he's never been in her life. So that for me was a big shock. I mean, first-time pregnancy and being faced with rejection was really soul-destroying, but very embarrassing as well.
You felt that ashamed for being a single parent?
I did. I felt ashamed. I felt like I was the only person that had this experience, and I didn't feel that I was allowed to enjoy pregnancy, if that made sense. So, you know, going for the appointments and stuff like that was very kind of like, yeah, it wasn't fun. And
when you're in that situation, where do you go? Who do you talk to? Did you feel you knew anybody that you could speak to?
I think for me, because I'm kind of known as the person that's always got it together. So when the person that's always got it together has not got it together, you've still got a front. So I kind of like hid it well, if I'm to be totally honest. I've got a fantastic family around me. I've got brilliant friends. But there was a time when some of my guy friends, one of them that actually came with a scan with me, I actually pretended that he was the dad, you know, just to kind of cover up, because I just felt like, you know, who has a story like this? So I did hide it well. I did.
Well, we've been chatting and I share a lot of your experiences. I know exactly how you felt. What is it you'd like to put to the panel today?
So for me, it would be, you know, I set up Young Mums Support Network, and I work with a cohort of young mums who are very isolated and have gone through quite traumatic experiences. So where I've had a good upbringing and I'm kind of confident in speaking now, how can we kind of like look at having accessible kind of information, not even just so much information, just making it so open that it's okay? Because I think everybody says it's okay now, but when you're in it, you don't think it's okay, because you really do hold it because of the shame and everything else surrounding. So how can we really break the barrier down and reduce this stigma that, you know, hopefully it's going to go away? But what would you advise, predominantly to young mums?
Yeah, I suppose, I mean, Claire, from your point of view, when you're dealing with a mum who's in that situation, what would you say to them? Because people must feel that same pressure. I mean, what do you say to try and reassure them?
Yeah, I mean,
what would you say to them? Because people must feel that same pressure. I mean, what do you say to try and reassure them?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important. I think what I'm hearing so far today is that there's this huge thing around stigma, and actually people feel that it's their own responsibility to seek help and to access online chats. And there is that, of course, but I think it's really important that professionals and people that are working with young mums or dads, that work in children's centres, that work out in the community, that we really upskill workers and community members to actually reach out to people, to routinely ask about how they're feeling, if they're okay, have they had experiences of trauma or difficulties in their life, and just to make it more normal to be asked, so that we're not actually always putting the onus onto people to find help for themselves.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And I suppose as well, Annie, you will get a lot of that. You know, people can come to you as a resource as well, but it's a different resource to an official resource, so it's down to you what you put on there, isn't it?
It is, it is. I think what's really important as well is that we don't, when we ask new mums, oh, congratulations, how are you feeling? And they say fine, that isn't the end of the conversation. Say, no, really, how are you? Did the baby sleep last night? Are you feeling a bit tearful? Have you eaten today? Has anyone been to see you today? Let's start talking to new mums in more depth about what's really happening there.
Yeah, and actually we talk about mums, and the whole event today is called Mum Takeover. As we were saying, use that hashtag wherever you are this afternoon, wherever you watch. You might be halfway through breastfeeding, you might be anticipating the school run a bit later on. You can share your videos. Have a look at bbc.co.uk/mum takeover as well. There's videos from our celebrity mums on there. You can upload your own, and there's loads of really good links to advice and support from our different supporters, all sorts of useful things for you on there. But as I said, not just mums today, dads as well. Giovanna, you've got one with you.
Exactly. Let's talk about dads, because I do think they get overlooked. Mark Williams is the founder of Fathers Reaching Out, who campaigns to raise awareness about postnatal depressions in families. So Mark, can you tell us a little bit more about you and what you do and what you've gone through?
Yeah, I was totally uneducated about mental health. I was 30 years of age, and I remember the pregnancy was fine, but I remember going in labour ward and these doctors came rushing in and said, your wife's got an emergency C-section, and instantly I had my first ever panic attack. I never had a panic attack before because I thought my wife and baby were going to die. My wife went on to have severe postnatal depression, where she should have had a mother and baby unit, and unfortunately wasn't there. And Wales haven't got a mother and baby unit, which I started a campaign with. I had to take it on myself. I had to give up my job, look after her, the baby. I had a new mortgage, I had money worries coming in, mortgage pay, credit cards. So eventually I was starting to get depression as well myself. Suicidal thoughts around about 4 or 5 month mark. And I suffered in silence for 6 years. My wife got well, and it wasn't until another trauma happened in my life until I had a full-on breakdown then. But I suffered, I was this man up, coming from a community of kickboxing, all that stuff, trying to be a man. And like I said, it took a breakdown. My physical health was great, because I was training and all that, but my mental health deteriorated to the point then I had a full breakdown. And I went on to speak to other fathers, and I think I've spoken to about 2,000 fathers, not just in the UK, but overseas. And I believe a lot of fathers go into other services because they're not screened quick enough, and the early prevention isn't in place. And the father's behaviour looks different than sometimes the mother. So it'd be a lot of drinking, anger, drug taking, and my coping skill was drinking during that time. And my personality was never, I was so angry during that time, I punched the sofa and broke my hand, you know. Totally not like me, like, so it's about raising awareness, it is.
And do you feel that you could get the support? Like, when you did go out, how did you go about getting that support and talking?
Yeah, well, I was put on a waiting list, counselling, and took it on myself to get the counselling. And I found out I would have been diagnosed with obviously postnatal depression, PTSD at birth, which is another thing I'm trying to campaign for. But I want health professionals to have a 5-minute conversation, because we've got to understand is that 5-minute conversation, the biggest killer in men under 50 now is suicide. Yet we're not screening or talking, having conversation with fathers. We got to have a conversation with mum and dad, because what happened when my wife was looking after me, her depression came back the second time. And it's got to be a more holistic approach. And I know the maternal mental health line has been absolutely amazing, because when I know Alan, and obviously Dr. Jane Hanley here, which I've been working with the last 5-6 years, you know, it's about working with professionals and people with obviously lived experience as well.
It's so true. I think, you know, becoming a parent, it's a massive thing for the man and the woman, for mum and dad. Anna and the panel, do you feel that we just overlook dads, that we forget them?
Do you know, it was interesting hearing you talk, Mark, there about your wife's emergency C-section, because I had one of those as well. And my husband said to me afterwards that in that situation, he felt very left out, like he was a spare part, that he was in the way. And then afterwards, you're trying so hard to help your wife that did you feel like you really took a back seat, I bet?
Yeah, I just wanted her to be well. So I never told my wife how I was feeling because I didn't want to impact on her mental health. So I suffered for years, you know, because I didn't know about the nightmares and flashbacks, thinking my wife had died, wake up in the middle of the night. What I know now is PTSD, you know, it never goes on and on today. But all I concerned was my wife, and that's what I wanted to explain to men. The quicker you get the help, the quicker recovery it is.
Yeah, and it helps everybody. I mean, that's a good point, isn't it, Neev? The fact that dads, you know, try and support mums, they care about mums, and they think, look, this is, you know, my wife's just been through a potentially traumatic experience like that. This moment's not about me. But actually, the truth is, it's about everybody, isn't it? It's about keeping everybody well.
I think for any dad that has been there supporting their wife or their partner through the whole pregnancy, watching them go through all the ups and downs, it's that pressure's rising for the father as well. Not to mention then watching your loved one go through a traumatic birth. Doesn't matter how easy your birth is, it's going to traumatise somebody who's watching it and trying to support you. And they're not going to sleep after the birth either, because they're helping you. So it does have a real effect on fathers. And even in my case, my husband, he's a really strong man, you know, but for him to watch me, someone he loves so much, sort of slip away from myself as I started to experience feelings of postnatal depression, was really, really taxing on him mentally as well. He was so in fear of the fact that he thought he was losing me in some way, and in a way, he was. Yeah. Because until I realised that I was suffering with this kind of mental health condition, I was just not okay. And I think that men really do get overlooked. Yeah. And it's a lot for them to watch that kind of play out. And it's absolutely brilliant that you're doing what you're doing to support all of the fathers out there, because, you know, they really look after their women.